Greetings, everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. As we take a look at part of the Autodesk Vision Series, we're going to be looking at gamifying design data. I am Eddie Perlberg. I am the product manager for 3ds Max and 3ds Max Design at Autodesk. And with me is my cohort and colleague, Joel Pennington. I'll let you introduce yourself in a minute. For those of you who don't know me, I joined Autodesk approximately 8 years ago as a part of the technical specialist team, and am now a part of the development team for 3ds Max. Prior to that, I was a CAD manager and visualization specialist at a number of architectural firms in the upper Midwest of North America. So I have a lot of experience dealing with design, but I also had the opportunity of working on a number of projects with motion graphics, and I worked on a gaming project. So it all kind of comes together in my experience. So those are some of the things that I've dealt with in the past. Joel?
Right, and I come from a film and TV background. Very early on, I went to the Vancouver Film School, cut my teeth at Electronic Arts here in Vancouver, and then moved down to California to work for Image Movers Digital, which was a virtual production company using motion capture data to create full feature animated films. After that company unfortunately closed, I started working at Autodesk based in Singapore to rebuild some of the Autodesk tools used in virtual production, which you'll see a connection later in the presentation, for the upcoming Avatar sequels. And I've been based in LA since about a year and a half working on those productions.
So that's a little bit of who we are. And at this point, we'd like to find out who you are. So starting over here, we're going to just have you introduce yourself. No, I wouldn't do that to you. But I would like to, but I would like to find out a little bit about you through maybe a show of hands. So for those of you, thank you, sir. Thank you for showing your hand. For those of you that are here, how many of you are currently working with design data and looking to maybe start to, are interested in new ways of presenting that, possibly through gamification? So I would say maybe about half. So how many of you are, one guy's like, that was really long, I might fit there. How many of you are actually gamers that are looking to enhance or extend your capability by also starting to work with design data? So you have designers and then you have gamers. And those typically tend to be the two types of people that are interested in the concepts of gamification of design. So here's our agenda for this afternoon. We'll first take a look at a very brief history of design presentations. And then we'll take a look at why gamification is important now. Then, of course, the meat of what are the benefits of gamifying your design. We'll show you some examples, and then some of the high-level strategies of successful gamification. And then there's always the Q&A section, and you can see that we have a microphone set up for that section, but we're also encouraging questions along the way. So if you do have any questions regarding any of these topics, please don't hesitate to rush up to the mic or raise your hand or yell them out real loud. Any questions about the questions and answers? So let's start off with a brief history of design presentations, and it really goes back to what they consider to be the very first architect, Imhotep, that designed, among other things, the pyramids of Giza. I'm sure I'm destroying his name. But even our friends at the Geico commercials had fun with the fact that presenting the designs doesn't always match how the designs turn out. But to get serious, when you take a look at presenting designs throughout history, here's something that Da Vinci did back in his day about some of the designs that he was working on for lifting water. And you can see that there's a lot of illustration and presentation that goes along with the design. And even Frank Lloyd Wright, as he presented his designs back in the late 50s and early 60s, here's a watercolor of falling water, one of his most famous elements. But you can see that the whole concept hasn't really changed from the very beginning. Now, of course, there are physical models that have been built during that time as well. So here is a physical model of the Freedom Towers in New York. But the capability of creating physical models has also paralleled those 2D elements. But it's really only in the last 20 years or so that we've had the capability of creating these kinds of assets with the computer-generated help or assistance. So here we have an architectural rendering. Here's an example of a bridge done in a computer-generated environment, and then something mechanical. And with the addition of the capabilities of rendering, we also introduced the capabilities of animation. So leveraging the intelligence or the capabilities of the softwares to also extend the storytelling ideas. So if we were to take a look at that in a very mind-blowing graph, here you can see, if you look at the bottom, the timeline and really what represented fine art, modern art, new media or ways of presenting. We can extend that out a little bit with what we're going to talk about as far as what we see the future. But if you think about it, it really represents what was the past, what is the present, what we consider virtual, and then what the future will be. So that's really, in a big graphy kind of way, what we wanted to talk about with you today. So why now? Why gamification now? And the reality is it breaks down into three basic pillars. And the first one is hardware. So like I said, 20 years or so ago, maybe even longer, we were working on these kinds of pieces. And now maybe some of you have something like this available to you in your office. This doesn't even represent the future of what cloud computing may present for this aspect of gamification. When we talk about the capabilities of the software, does anybody remember playing this game? Yeah. Oh, cool. I'm not the oldest person in the room. Okay. But if you think about it, here's really what a baseball game has come from to where it is now as far as playing a game that was baseball. So obviously, in the early days, we had very little of a storytelling piece that we could use, where now the reality of what the softwares can do, what gaming can do, is present a very realistic kind of presentation. It's through this realism that the emotions of a design are portrayed. And then there are also the aspects of the new types of ways of presenting this data. So one of the benefits or capabilities, not only of the hardware of computing gamification, but also presenting gamification have come a long way. So before we go any further, someone asked me as I was walking in today, what is gamification? And I thought, well, you know, we might need to take a moment and define. So some of you may know it as virtual reality. Does that help? Or maybe immersive multimedia. Perhaps some of you know it as augmented reality. I was talking to someone a little bit earlier. I asked them what gamification meant to them. They said, I am Groot. I didn't know. Do I have any Guardians of the Galaxy fans? Just me. Okay, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of a sense of all of the things that really gamification can encompass. What we really want to talk about, though, are the benefits. So why gamification over our traditional presentation? And it really represents three basic pillars. The first one being the freedom that gamification provides. The ability to move around inside of a design to really explore that design piece. Then there is the ability to interact with it. And then lastly, there is the portability of gamification. So the ability to take that design and move it into more portable types of presentation hardware so that we can not only presented in a more comfortable setting. Typically in the past, this was done in a studio or in an office, and schedules need to be coordinated and so on. Now we can actually get gamified design presentations right down to a mobile device. So those are some of the things that we're going to be looking at. But of course, gamification and design seem to be like a natural marriage, but we're finding that the overall lines of what is a rendering or what is a game or what is a design, those lines are blurring, and it actually extends out to other areas of the media and entertainment world. So, Joel?
Sure. So let's just take a left turn here for a second and look at a comparable industry, and let's use virtual production as an example. In virtual production, you need the freedom as a director to create fantastic worlds and then film them. Worlds that don't exist on planet Earth or are too costly to make in a live action scenario. Here we've got an example with Ron Fisher standing in front of a massive green screen under a techno crane at UVS1 down in Hollywood, California. And he is going home to his bed at 7 o'clock that night. He's not out on set in some remote location. His director is able to film as though they are on that remote location. They have the freedom to film and shoot wherever they want. But there is a requirement. In order for you to have that freedom, you need to have a high level of interactivity. And so here we have a picture of the making of one of the greatest films of our time, Mars Needs Mums, and which I worked on, so I can say that. And our director is interacting with the physicality of the performance. He's working with the actor who is, motion is being transformed into character animation. That interactivity isn't just clicking with a mouse or using a joystick or a controller. It's something different. It's this tangible connection between the physical and the virtual. And we need it to be portable. So our directors, our creative visionaries, need to have the ability to imagine the world, but then interface with it. They need that window into the world, and that window needs to be portable enough that they can hold it and move it. We call that the virtual camera. The virtual camera gives them the ability to film, change, manipulate, edit, scout, and so on and so forth. It's a very exciting medium. Here we've got two major directors, Peter Jackson and Steven Spielberg, working on Tintin using a hodgepodge type of virtual camera, but they still managed to produce a fantastic film out of it. And it's been used since for many productions. So BitSquid. BitSquid was a very exciting acquisition for Autodesk. And BitSquid helps round out the Autodesk portfolio in such a way that we now have content creators, and Autodesk also has a game engine and the ability to create the fantastic worlds for those interactive experiences. We're extremely excited about the BitSquid family joining Autodesk.
Thanks. It's actually perfect, Joel. It's this. The acquisition of a game engine for Autodesk has been an important, not only so that we can better maintain and direct our softwares in the gaming world, but we really saw that blurring of lines that we're talking about, that ability of a designer to use this kind of technology, of a filmmaker to use this kind of technology, as well as a game artist to use this technology. All of those lines that we used to consider to be film, game, and design visualization, all that blurring, and in order to better support that kind of solution, we saw that BitSquid or the acquisition of a game engine and that type of technology is really going to be able to extend your capability in all of those areas. And it's also one of the driving elements to the development of 3ds Max moving forward, is that how can we support all of those different areas, that blurring of lines, so that Max fits into that solution set as well. So of course we have very good friends and partners in a number of other game engines, but this is what we'll be entering the market with. So we remember those three pillars. There's freedom, there's interactivity, and then there's portability. So let me give you an example of freedom. And to start off, I thought I'd show you very quickly what gamification is, or some of the steps. So here we are in that BitSquid product, and we're actually just building out a little bit of an environment. So this particular environment is something that is going to be very game-like, but I thought I'd start very game-like so you can see how it transitions to design. So we're laying out our environment, we're putting in the assets and the pieces that we want to move about. So again, just very similar to other applications, you're laying out your game design, and whether or not these were created with simple objects here in the game engine, or we're bringing in and importing in objects that are specific to our game that were created in other softwares like 3ds Max, Maya, Maya LT. Wherever these were developed, they can be brought in, and you can see that there's a certain amount of animation that is assigned to them. One of the compelling aspects of a game engine for design is that it is timelineless. So you'll see that objects are moving as though they were being influenced by the wind. So now that we have objects in here, the next thing we do is put in triggers. And the triggers you'll see are what interacts with as we play this game. So here I'm going to go walking around, and you'll see that as I walk through those yellow boxes, those triggers, it initiates or starts something. So when I walk through some, the bridge is collapsed. When I walk through others, I collect coins, and I got to practice this a little bit more. Okay, so now let's take that, what we've learned about a video game, and apply it to a house design. So we bring in the asset, not exactly what was that, a seal or something with wings? But we'll bring in an asset. This was created in Autodesk Revit, and we'll start to enhance it exactly as we did the video game environment. So here we're laying out trees as we did little columns in the other software, or in the other example. Let's go ahead and lay out some bigger trees, and like the palm trees in our game, you'll see that the palm trees here in our design example seem to have the breeze blowing through them. But just like bringing in other assets, we can move, rotate, scale them around. These are all the kinds of things that typically you would do to lay out a game. Now I'm doing that with my design presentation. But what about those triggers? What can we do? So here you'll see created a gate. What do we want the gate to do? Well, we obviously don't want bridges to collapse, and there's not going to be a lot of money coins in our little design, but we do want, as we walk up to the gate, to have the gate open and close. So now that we have that animation assigned to it, we'll need the trigger. So we have an animation assigned to an object. We have a trigger that now we just need to tie those two together. And when you talk about some of the barriers to why this isn't being used more, it's this kind of complexity that is currently preventing a lot of people from using gamified assets. But you can see that as we walk through that trigger, that opened up for us.
And I'm excited that robots will own houses in the future.
It's very exciting that in the future, and walk through office buildings.
Yeah.
So here you can see another example. Here's an office building. Here's our future owner of the office building. But what that freedom that we talked about, the ability for a potential owner to walk through a potential design exactly as they would when it's built, to climb up the stairs, to go down the hallway, these kinds of things were always impossible in our current offerings. Because even though the visualization specialist would have done a great job of trying to figure out the logical paths I can assure you, as a former visualization specialist, there was always the client that asked, well, what about over there? And while it was great for collecting more revenue to generate that over there, it didn't give them the freedom they were looking for. So hopefully you're getting a sense now of the freedoms that gamification of design offers. So what was the next pillar? Interactivity. So let's take a look at something interactive. Here's a design being done in an Autodesk software. This is Fusion 360. So here's a go-kart, and here's a typical piece of presentation. But there's no way that I can interact with this picture. So let's bring it into a game engine. Let's walk around. And if you're really into hubcaps, you can get up close. The great part of interactivity is I decide what I'd like to investigate further. And it might be different from what you would want to investigate. Of course, whenever you talk about go-karts and games,
Yes,
you have to
that's the
talk
one.
about. But just like we always enjoyed interacting with our go-kart with Mario Kart, well, let's interact with our go-kart exactly like that in our design. So here we are providing the same kind of excitement to the design, the same kind of interactivity that we enjoyed with Mario Kart. Make sense? So it's that kind of thing, but it extends beyond. Here you can see I'm getting a first-person perspective. Here I'm getting an audience perspective. You'll notice I didn't put a driver in. This isn't a video game, this is design. So it doesn't need a driver per se. I need to know how the design is working. Third pillar, portability. So here you can see is a typical architectural design being put onto a portable device. Not sure what brand that is. Actually, I know exactly what brand that is. But the key to it is the fact that this was all part of a game and then published to the type of asset that could be consumed on a portable device. And think of how interesting it would be to present this kind of data to a customer in the space that they were standing in, so that they could interact with and see in the space the designs that were being brought together. So it's that kind of, those are the three elements.
So yeah, let's get going.
I'm sold. Let's do one.
Let's do this. But there are a few steps to get to gamification from CAD data. I think if we take a look, you've got a couple options. You could work in a consultancy as a service bureau and do that kind of work for clients. You would probably, if you were working on your own, you'd write a wiki page that would have a few steps that you'd have to follow, like making sure you use the right FBX format, making sure that your meshes were optimized correctly. Don't forget about textures, materials, shaders, UVs, normals, so on and so forth. Lights have to be baked, and textures and shaders need to be redone because the lights affected it. And then you've got something that looks pretty good. And
Wow.
it turns out that that's actually a lot of work.
Wow.
Yeah. So all that work happens between design applications like Max, Inventor, Revit, and before you get into your game engine IDE, so that you can create that interactive experience for your customers.
Oh, what's IDE?
So an IDE, like this right here, allows you to build out that whole experience. It lets you take your models, take your textures, environments, put them all together with behaviors, plugins, etc., so on and so forth, with your special effects to build out an entire interactive experience.
does IDE stand for anything, or was it just Scrabble letters that fell out of the bag?
I think it stands for something. Does anyone in the audience want to tell me what IDE stands for? There it is, Integrated Development Environment.
Okay.
Yeah, very technical. So a game engine IDE is really a great place to play. That's a fun place to be in. But did you know that bringing CAD assets to the IDE is not a fun place to be? And that it's about 80% of the time. So for every dollar that you spend to make cool stuff for your customers, 80 cents is going to be spent on the boring part before you even get into the IDE.
What does that say?
Yeah, so what does that say? Well, there's a little bit of work that needs to happen with your meshes. You need to make sure that the meshes are configured properly. Many CAD programs don't build out the meshes to be optimized for game use. In fact, I would say all CAD programs don't build meshes to be optimized for game use right away. So you need to massage them and make sure that they work correctly. That's like the normals, if the normals are flipped. That's if the UVs don't line up correctly. You might even be missing things. You might have to build stuff. If your lights don't transfer over, you'll probably want to bake them. You want to create new lights. You've got issues with materials, textures, and shaders as well. So as a pragmatic business person, I would say that 80% is not great. I would say I want to get rid of that. And the other thing, the other kicker, kick you while you're down, is that it's not all that repeatable. So if you create this fantastic interactive experience, and then your client comes to you and said, you know what, I actually changed the design of the building.
I know that rarely happens, but
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, so I changed the design of the building. Can you just run that through the pipeline again and get it back into the game engine in an hour or two? Because I need to be able to show it to my customers. And it turns out that's actually not super simple. It's great for generating a lot of revenue, but you're not going to have very happy customers. So strategies for successful gamification. Well, we're not at the strategies yet, but we're at the reality. You need a lot of expert knowledge. You're going to spend a lot of time getting data prepared just to get into the IDE before you can create those compelling interactive experiences. And you don't have that sync. It's not repeatable. You're not going to be able to easily bring new stuff in, or if you make some changes, send it back to the source data so that the original creators of that content will know that you made some changes.
To be clear, that's where we are at today.
Yeah.
And we're not here to try to talk you out of it. Obviously, we see that this represents a great opportunity. We're just preparing you for some of the realities of today and then moving forward.
So moving forward, we've got Max, fantastic DCC. We've got Inventor, an amazing product that lets you create mechanical objects, devices, motors, you name it. And Revit, the architectural solution of the future. And then we've got game engines similar to BitSquid on the other side. And between those guys, we have the power of cloud computation. Infinite computing, as we were all promised. Well, it's true. It turns out that many of the things that we do right now, we believe with game engines like BitSquid and an Autodesk knowledge with our DCCs, can be automated and processed through cloud computing at a very high rate so that your customers can see their materials or their products in that gamified experience much quicker than you would otherwise get it. That's a big order. That's a tall order. I mean, this is a vision. This is a tall order, but basically we're looking at processing geometry, getting all the UVs, the normals, the mesh, skinny polygons, all that stuff cleaned up, sorted out. Materials work properly, shaders, textures, so on and so forth. Lights work. They just flow right through. And that they flow through to BitSquid.
Or other game engines.
Or game engines, or other game engines. And that they also flow back. So if you make changes, you can go backwards and forwards.
Are we allowed to ask questions in the middle?
Anytime you'd like to ask a question. So the question was, are we allowed to ask questions at any time? So if you can jump up to the mic, or...
I gotta go, so I just have a quick question. Is this even on? Okay.
It is on.
Just a quick question. Are you saying that there's going to be some sort of intermediary step here in the future through Autodesk that will automatically do all those steps for us? Because right now our teams are going through a lot of hoops. I mean, when you threw up the 80% graphic up there, I think you're dead on with that.
Yeah.
If not 90%. It's a lot of work to go through and clean up
Yeah.
high-end CAD models. Our company does aircraft.
Yeah.
So when we go through and get the CAD models from the engineers, we have to go through a tremendous amount of effort to get those models ready for the game engine. Are you saying that there's some sort of automated system to do this, or that it will somehow speed up our time? Because it's very labor intensive and it requires an artist's eye.
Absolutely. Yeah, you need the expert knowledge, and you have to spend a huge amount of effort just to get something that can be art directed. So the question was, will this be automatic? And the answer is, this is a vision piece, and that our interaction with BitSquid is so new, but it's so exciting. And we think that with game engines like BitSquid, where we have this under the hood knowledge of what's happening, and this under the hood knowledge of what's happening with our architectural and our DCC products and our engineering products, that we can create a way to transmit our data back and forth that is natively acceptable to both packages. And I'm not saying that that's something that would be available right now. I don't have a USB stick in my back pocket showing the solution, but that's our vision going forward.
To your point, yeah, to your point, what we're recognizing is that exactly what you're recognizing is that there's a lot of effort that is done, and there are elements that we've recognized that could be automated to leverage cloud computing, harness that kind of power to optimize models and bake lights and those kinds of things that you're spending a lot of cycles on. So yes, so the answer is there is automagical ways that we're looking to reduce the number of cycles that it requires, or to identify and hold artist direction to how those are being optimized, and then apply that to other models as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Please.
My question was like, can you say a little bit about BitSquid and other game engines that will it be compatible, or will it be like only Autodesk kind of thing? If you automate something, are you using artificial intelligence, or what is it, that direction? So what stage BitSquid is and what stage you envision? Can you give some kind of understanding of that?
So the question was, is this, and correct me if I'm wrong, is this pure Autodesk, or is it Autodesk and other game engines as well? This only works, right? Don't get me wrong, this only works if the language of the game engine and the language of the DCC products is compatible enough that data conversion going through isn't the current arduous task that it is now. So if we get to a future where a game engine like BitSquid just natively talks to these products, then we're great, we're good to go. And that, again, that's a vision, that's what we're planning to do going forward.
I think what you're saying is, in order to get the full experience,
yeah,
obviously to have everybody in the same play art gives you the fullest experience, but you know, if you're taking design data and moving it to another game engine, there are definitely areas of the, you know, this slide that you'll be able to take advantage of the optimizations and the baking and you know, those kinds of things, and apply that to whatever game engine would be appropriate. I think it's what you're saying is the arrow back might only be applicable to a full Autodesk offering. So,
Well put.
yeah. Any other questions? So the question for you at home is there any intention of capturing Mocap data into our offering of BitSquid for that type of enhancement? Is that, did I capture? And the answer is absolutely. So one of the things that we're still trying to figure out with this new acquisition is, I don't want to give you the impression that BitSquid is only going to be for design or for games, but it's very obvious, like many of our other products, there are needs of one and needs for another. And BitSquid is going to be it already is successful in the gaming world, and we want to, you know, make that more successful. And part of that success is the ability to bring in that kind of data, like Mocap Data. At the same time, there are elements to the design world that are unique to its needs. And one of the things we're looking at is how do we make BitSquid service both? So automating processes for design, extending data types in another design. The ability to capture simulations coming out of some of our other softwares. Perhaps you'd like to see as you enter a room how the air flows through it. Well, we have softwares that are currently generating that kind of simulation. Wouldn't it be cool to stand in the middle of the room and see how the air moves and then maybe turn something and how it changes the air? Those are the kinds of design decisions that gamification can help, and it's that kind of excitement that a video game could enjoy. So these are the, you know, these are the exciting elements that having a game engine really represented to Autodesk, and why we wanted to have that as part of our offering.
You know what's great too about what you said is that the simulation data that's being created is for professional eyes only. So it's maybe a report, some charts, and a bunch of heavy-duty data. But if you're going to a town hall meeting, you want to be able to present that to folks who don't know how to read these types of reports. Being able to visualize it and experience it in a real-time format lets them understand exactly how that's going to affect their lives.
So here's a great example to extend your you know, to kind of tie this all together. Not too long ago, for the Super Bowl in North America, one of the TV channels asked us to show the winds blowing around the stadium. And it just so happens one of the guys that made that happen is sitting in the back row. So Louis took the image of what is the stadium and took the data and brought it into 3ds Max and showed it. But what if I could get that kind of same input as the punter, who is going to be dealing with those winds blowing through to stand it, you know, to move down onto the field, and that's the kind of way of presenting the data that would be significantly enhanced from what Louis created for a TV show. So those are the kinds of things, to bring it all together, we're really looking forward to for gamification.
Yes?
So one product that you guys make that I've not seen up there is Maya. So how are you looking at integrating this into Maya as well?
Oh, so I didn't make that clear. So what we've been talking about is the gamification of design. And so what you're seeing over here on the right-hand side is some of the products that we consider to be strong in the design world. When I talk about video game creation, those tend to be what we consider to be the media, M&E products, and that's where BitSquid will not be the same as a designer would use. It will be a video game creator as it is now, and it will take in data from Maya, Maya LT, 3ds Max, and the typical game creation kinds of. So we've been focusing more on the design aspect, but there's an entirely parallel track that goes along with entertainment. But excellent question, thank you. For those of you at home who didn't hear the question, sorry about that. There was I think you got the answer. Okay. You could probably figure out from the way I answered it, right?
All right.
Any other questions? Well, thank you then very much for coming out. We appreciate your time, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your event here in Vancouver. Welcome to SIGGRAPH 2014.